As we move towards our next global financial crisis, which, according to Ron Paul, is going to be a humdinger worse than before, let's see what technocrats are up to, which is going to be interesting because the next person in the White House is going to preside over that. And Pat Wood is joining me back here again. Have you ever noticed that Kissinger and Brzezinski always pop up right in the middle of this, where just before something happens? Funny that, isn't it?
This has been the modus operandi for these guys ever since they started getting into the game. We see them all the time.
Okay, we have an election going here. Many on the right are on the side of Trump, a lot on the left on the side of Bernie Sanders. This is a populist revolt, I think, against the status quo. But Trump is a technocrat, is what you're saying.
Well, here's the idea behind this. Everybody will acknowledge that Trump is not a politician. That's one of the great appeals he has right now to the American people. On the other hand, he's a fix-it guy. Mr. Fix-It. You have a problem, he can fix it. You have a bad trade agreement, he can negotiate a better one. You have too many entitlements, why, he has an answer for that. He can fix it. He's much like the technocrats that were used in Europe in 2010 when Italy and Greece were in flames. And Mario Monti was appointed to be prime minister in Italy. He's a member of the Trilateral Commission, by the way. They called him a technocrat on the way in. They said, we don't care what you do, but just fix the problems there. It was not a political deal. Same thing happened in Greece. Right now, the American people, the pendulum is going away from the ideology of a constitutional republic. It's going the other way, and people are just saying, look, we don't care if you're a socialist, we don't care if you're a communist, we don't care if you're a right-wing nationalist or a constitutional conservative. All we want you to do is go in there and fix the carnage, stop the bleeding, bring jobs back to America, get us back on an even keel because we're sinking. And they don't understand what they're asking for. This is the danger of this, I think. But Trump is a technocrat in that sense. He's Mr. Fix-It. He has no ideology that anybody would be particularly interested in. He's a mishmash of ideology from left and right, but he promises to fix the things that people are hurting over. And, you know, whether it's the border, whether it's the economy, the middle class, entitlements, etc., he's addressing all these issues. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Most of them he can't really do because the president can't do those things by themselves. But, you know, America is expressing itself here. Another interesting angle on this is some people have suggested to me that Trump really is just kind of the middle finger vote for the establishment. You know, some people just say, I don't care. I like this guy, man. He's rocking the boat. I'm going to vote for him just because he's rocking the boat.
People are losing faith in the system. Maybe that's a better way to put it. When I was listening to Ron Paul, that's basically what he was saying was going to happen, too, is that once Mother Hubbard's cupboard was bare, the disillusionment was going to be a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth. And that's what people are showing. You know, we had a Tea Party movement, which was voting its discontent, and there was this scramble in the Republican Party to contain that movement. It was seen as an invasive virus to the otherwise wonderfully functioning right-wing supposed host. It hasn't worked. That's why we're seeing the rise of Trump again. People said, we sent you to Congress to fix these things. You ain't fixing them. On the left side, the left can't understand why utopia hasn't arrived yet, especially all the millennial college types. Utopia should be here right now, and you have to go to Washington and fix things. So they're saying fix things as well, but the two fixes are diametrically opposed to each other because you know and I know that you can't fix our economic problems with Bernie Sanders' idea of what to do.
Not at all, but you're right. People don't distinguish between the two very well. Again, this is just another caution. Americans and voters should be careful what they wish for, because unless they really understand the issues and can read through the flack that's being delivered to us daily, they're going to get something very different than what they thought they were going to get. And of course, that's what happened with Obama, too. I've talked to people who voted for him twice, and they said, my gosh, I had no idea what was going on. And now I see the results of it. It's like, I want to run from it.
Well, the media's not telling them either. I've talked about education. The problem that you're facing is that the millennials will not brought up in the public school system on the Constitution, on the foundational principles of the country, on why we are the way we are. They think that freedom just sort of happens by happenstance. So they run around yapping about rights or rot. They do not realize the connection because there was a fix-it guy back in the 1930s called Hitler, and that was the same thing. Everything's a mess. Come in, fix it, and make us great again. He did. He actually fixed it, but the side effects were horrible.
That's right. The unintended consequences. Like I'm telling people routinely now, quit wasting airtime on the national election. It's going to be a fool's paradise at this point. If Americans understood the clear and present danger of technocracy, which The controllers are these technocrats operating behind the scenes, making rules and regulations, etc. If Americans don't pick up on this eventually, we're in big trouble because people should be spending time today cleaning up their local communities. They're always worried about the bugaboo that they can't see or get their hands on. You know, you're a tough guy when you're yelling at somebody down the street. But when you're standing nose to nose with them, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm going to fall apart. Well, there's plenty of technocrats and there's plenty of people in every community in America that need to be rooted out and corrected and the communities put back right again the way they should be. And Americans could be tremendously effective at doing this. And many communities have been successful, but it needs to happen all over America. So for all the time that people are putting into talking and discussing, well, should it be this guy, that guy, whatever, Trump or whoever, they could have attended 3 meetings down in their local community, whether it be county commissioners or city council or a school board or a water board or whatever. They could have actually gotten some traction on something rather than just talking about, you know, being an armchair quarterback.
Pat, let's zoom out. You watch world events and all of the interconnecting dots. Where do you see things moving?
The big play right now at the United Nations level, which I would also equate to the Trilateral Commission level, is the conversion of the global economy into sustainable development. This has been declared now by multiple people at the United Nations, and we need to take them at their word. They have a plan. I have to say it's a little bit crazy. Christiana Figueres, for instance, last year she said, this is the first time in the history of mankind that we're setting ourselves the task of intentionally, within a defined period of time, to change the economic development model that has been reigning for at least 150 years since the Industrial Revolution. The upshot of this, John, is that economic forecasters across the world are having trouble making decent forecasts. You know, every time some new government number comes out or industry number, the subheadline is economists miss. Why are they missing? They're complaining that they're missing because the formulas and the techniques they had in past years are not working today.
Yeah, by the way, have you noticed the Fed never gets it right? In all of their projections, they're never right. And these are the people determining monetary policy.
That's right. And, you know, the reason things aren't working is because there's 2 different economic models working in the same space on a global basis. You have capitalism and free enterprise on one hand, and you have technocracy on the other. And they're not just oil and water. They're completely opposite of each other, and they cannot exist in the same space. And that's why there's so much economic dysfunction. Everywhere you look in the world, there's economic dysfunction. And, of course, political dysfunction is following right behind it. And spiritual dysfunction is following right behind that. This is symptomatic to me that there's something big going on in international space right now. And I believe that it's their attempts to convert the world into a technocracy and throw out capitalism and free enterprise. And, of course, that would mean the monetary system, John's going to go with it. It can't survive.
It's like a merger of socialism and capitalism together. And remember, Tony Blair was talking about the third way about 20 years ago.
That's right. That was Brzezinski's theme, too, by the way.
Then that means that that's probably what's up. But the third way is capitalism functions, but we're going to stand over it and watch every single thing that it does.
You know, the resource-based economy, which is technocracy, versus supply and demand and capitalism and free enterprise. Their green economy, one of the synonyms they call it, the green economy, is based on constraint rather than freedom. So they will tell you what you can make. They will tell you what you can consume. They will manage it from top to bottom. You will have basically no choice as to what you make if you're a businessman or what you consume if you're a consumer. And they feel that they can achieve the maximum efficiency in the system by using their scientific method to determine what should be produced and what should be consumed. This is a complete takeover of the economic system. Every time people hear the term sustainable development, they ought to think, no, the United Nations is not trying to take over and make a world government. This is an economic takeover. Governance will follow, but it's an economic takeover of epic magnitude. There's never been anything like this happen in the world before. And in fact, Christiana Figueres admits that. She said in the very next statement in that same press release, she said, this is probably the most difficult task we've ever given ourselves, which is to intentionally transform the economic development model for the first time in human history. She gets it.
Right, and it was like when the federal income tax was created back in 1913. As the money flowed to the feds directly, you began to see the shift of power from the states to the federal government. I think that Ron Paul will be proven correct, that we have a just huge blowout coming. We're running into another crisis, at least as bad as the 2007, 2008, probably worse. But at some point in the 2020s, we're going to finally need to remake the world system. Some people were forecasting as early as 2018. What are they going to do to remake this system? Because number one, the old one will have its problems. Number two, everybody will feel much pain, and they'll start that familiar chant of fix it, fix it, fix it. And it won't be our politicians who fix it. They will be told what to do by the international financiers who are just in love with technocracy.
That's right. And you have, for instance, a stepping stone to this is removing cash from society. Now, you have people like Larry Summers, who's a member of the Trilateral Commission. Larry Summers is stumping almost every month or every other month with an article on why cash should be taken out of society. And in particular, right now, as a stepping stone, he wants to remove the $100 bill from circulation. That'd be a good start, actually, to take cash out altogether. But central banks around the world are now calling for the removal of cash from the system and including everybody in the digital system. This is part of the no one left behind theory, I believe. They want to get everybody in the system, not just the elite or the rich or whatever. But if they remove cash successfully from the global economic system and everybody is forced to be in the digital world, you can see how easy it would be to convert it to anything you want to do. It's just a matter of reloading the software and telling everybody what to expect. The other thing is just flat out revolutionary to me is that I saw an article that the Bank of England is researching right now a blockchain currency similar to Bitcoin where they control the repository and where they intend to create a global currency that will be modeled after Bitcoin and similar digital currencies that they will control, and it will be a transaction-oriented currency, much like Bitcoin is today. The implications of that, John, are the commercial banks in the world, all of the commercial banking system right now that gets income from transactions. That would be e-commerce, that would be stock trading and stuff like that. We have financial transactions. The person who controls, or the entity that controls the digital currency of that nature would strip away all of the transaction fees from the other banks in the world. This would put them out of business. This would literally drive the commercial banks and the transaction banks out of business, meaning that the central banks, maybe just a very few, maybe the Bank for International Settlements, maybe the Bank of England, maybe a small consortium of them, the strong men, the group of 8 or whatever, if they controlled this, they would literally control all of the economic transactions in the world. This would fit very well into technocracy, by the way, and that's why I really picked up on it in the first place. But they're talking about it openly. We should take note. That's all I could say. We should be paying attention to what these people are saying.
They actually telegraph ahead of time what's going on if you look at the right sources. Now, you know that part of Bernie Sanders' agenda is to begin putting transaction taxes in there. And they say, oh, it's only an itty-bitty little tax here, and it's only an itty-bitty little tax. There's almost never a discussion on that side of the equation of let's cut government by 50%. Boy, we could save a giant plate load of money. That never comes into the equation. The answer is always more taxes, and they're trying to find more ways to do it, even as you can see the system rupturing, and governments never seem to be able to grapple with that. That's why Europe is in stagnation.
I got tickled the other day that the word stagflation is coming back into the vocabulary.
That's an old one for you.
Isn't that an old one?
Yeah,
I remember the guy that invented that. You probably do too. His name was Harry, he's a newsletter writer from the 70s.
Harry Schultz.
Harry Schultz, that's right, exactly.
Yep.
That was his word, stagflation. He wrote article after article on it. And a few years ago, I was doing some analysis and stuff along his line, and I thought we're going to go one step beyond this, and we're going to call it schizoflation. I actually bought a domain name at the time just to document that I came up with the word schizoflation. But, that's about what we're facing today. It's like absolutely insane. There's no rhyme or reason to it. One thing goes through the roof, and the other thing goes just in the toilet. People can't hardly track it anymore.
Right, because you know what they're trying to do? They're trying to apply the old rules to the new situation. People are trying to put sense to their lives, and it affects you and me who are little people. We look at all of this. This is running out of our control. There's nothing you or I can do about this.
Well, that's right. I was talking to an international oil broker, and he knows a lot of wealthy people, and we were kibitzing over dinner last night. Well, what do you do if you have a lot of money? What do people do with their money? He says, people are just absolutely perplexed. There's no place to put their money. He said he knows one guy that has a boatload of money, and he took it to Europe, I think, and he put it in the bank. And it's costing him money every year to keep the money in the bank. And he said,